Hey, thanks for checking out The Solid Verbal. Now would be a great time to subscribe to the channel for college football content all off season long.
Welcome back to the Solid Verbal, boys and girls. My name is Ty Hildenbrand, that fine gentleman over there on the left side of your screen. Dan Rubenstein. Sir, football is now over. Like, for real over.
Right.
College was over a month ago. The NFL over. We are recording this the day after the Chiefs knocked off the Eagles in the Super Bowl. So congratulations if there are any KC fans out there, Dan. We're not going to waste too much time at the top here talking about what we did or didn't do this weekend, what we ate or didn't eat. But it is always good to be with you, sir. How are you?
I'm good, though. To start the show, slighting, I don't know, the XFL, the USFL. Like, are you not going to watch... I'm trying to think of a name. Like, are you not going to watch Everett Golson lead the Rochester Marauders out onto the field? No? Okay.
I'm just not. Okay. Now is the time to sort of slink back into the off season.
Yeah. Sure.
And as such, on today's episode, get in touch with our inner fandom, is it not?
It is. And it's one of those things where we now have the benefit of a little bit of time to reflect upon the season, but I wanted to get into what binds us as fans. And there's very little that a Kansas State fan has in common with a Washington State fan, has in common with an Arkansas fan, has in common with a North Carolina fan, beyond the experience of what you feel, what one feels while watching their team play. And so today's episode, and I think it's going to be a two-parter, I think today's episode is going to be what binds us as fans, the emotions. We're going to let down some walls.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So the emotions, positive, negative, weird, extreme, whatever that we feel during games and the specific things that bring out said emotions. And then I think, and we've been putting out a poll on verballers.com for people to contribute to these couple shows. I think it's going to be more team specific later in the week. But today it's about football things that make us all feel things. And so I'm excited to sort of peel back the layers that is Ty Hildenbrand.
And you, Dan Rubenstein, yeah.
Of course. So hopefully people find a kernel of relatability in something that we go through or something that the subscribers on verballers.com go through.
Verballers.com, as you mentioned, we had our Patreon community weigh in. I'm going to go through some of those answers as we progress through our various levels of questioning to get deeper and deeper as fans.
Yeah.
Don't forget to hit subscribe, not just on the podcast feed, but also on the YouTube channel. Follow us wherever you can on social media. And also every Thursday, we are sending out just sort of a weekly update, what you missed in college football. Quick slants.solidverbal.com is where you can go to read the previous editions of that and also subscribe.
Correct. Yeah. And this is something that we've touched on a little bit. Maybe a year or two ago, we did like a what we love about college football. And it was just the things that brought us specific joy. But I think with further time, we've had an opportunity to reflect on a number of emotions. And I have a long list of things that bring me joy while watching a football game, especially rooting on my team watching a football game. Is that when I mentioned the squirt through, Ty?
I think that was the mysterious squirt through.
Yeah, when a tiny running back runs into the line of scrimmage, you lose him, and then all of a sudden, he makes his way out of a different gap and collects, 37 more yards or something.
The squirt through, the mysterious
squirt through. Yeah, the mysterious squirt through. So this may be an updated version of that, just the things that bring us joy and outrage and lightly violent or bloodthirsty or hopeful or hopeless, or what happens when our team loses a big game, what happens when our team wins a big game. And so let's let down some walls, Ty.
How are you feeling now?
Yeah, that's right, Dr. Melfi.
How are you feeling now?
We're going to figure it out.
Why don't we start here, Dan? This was the first question that we posed to the Verballerhood. And you put this list together. You're kind of commandeering this two-part college football therapy episode, what we're calling this. What brings you joy? So we talked about the mysterious squirt through. Imagine this as a long list of mysterious squirt throughs.
So stupid. Yeah.
So as an example, I've got something that gives me immense joy. And it doesn't have to be my team, although often if it is my team,
Yeah.
it's sort of like
I just went with my team. I mean, I'm an Oregon Duck fan, but this is not specific to Oregon Duck.
no.
Yeah.
But if it is my team, this is double the pleasure, double the fun. Mm-hmm. How about a walk-in touchdown on 4th and goal?
Right. So you're nervous that the first 3 tries haven't worked out.
The first 3 tries are always a run up the middle. Run up the middle, or they'll do the thing where it's 3rd and 1, or 3rd and goal from the 1-inch line.
Mm-hmm.
And they line up in the pistol. What are we doing here, guys? What are we doing? So it all comes down to this. 4th and goal, 1-inch line, and they do like an Iowa-style naked bootleg, and a quarterback just sort of like waltzes in. Untouched, no big deal. Or you got a tight end leaking off the line, across the defense, into the back corner of the end zone, wide open, or like a running back swing pass or something that somebody's just uncovered and able to walk untouched into the end zone.
So it's
immense, unlimited source of joy for me as a football fan.
Is that more joy or more relief, though?
It's both.
Okay.
I think the joy stems from the relief.
I think it's a little bit of the final hammer swing from Andy Dufresne, just chipping away, right? Chipping away at the wall, and then finally it's that sweet freedom. So it's that moment. Yeah, I'm with you. I actually have this very specific naked bootleg touchdown where even the offensive line thinks it's a run. And even only the quarterback and running back don't know it is. And so maybe the cameras are fooled a little bit. I think Peyton Manning had one of those where it was just so unlikely that he was going to keep it on the naked and there's nobody within 10 yards of him.
Oh,
yes.
the camera fooling play action is a whole other class of play action.
Yeah. It's pretty great. It's a pretty wonderful thing. So I had that on my list. What else is on your list? Let's go through the very specific moments that bring you joy rooting for a team, because you happen to root for 2 teams. So maybe it is double the pleasure.
I have a 3rd down sack of a particularly elusive quarterback after several attempts to bring him down. So it kind of rides on both ends of the spectrum here, where on one sense, it's outrageous that I can use Caleb Williams as an example. He's a perfect example of this.
Yes.
Where he's tracking back and back and back. He's putting move after move on defenders that are rushing at him full speed. And so there have been multiple attempts to bring him down. The first 2 to 3 have failed. And then at long last, somebody trips him up. Before you know it, it's going to be like 4th and 25. Your team's in a good position to flip the field.
Yeah, there's something about the immense joy you feel when you know an opposing quarterback should be throwing it away, to just live to play another down and have, 3rd and 11 instead of 3rd and 24, and they don't do it when they're so confident, they're so callous. That does bring me joy. That does bring me joy when my team, for whatever reason, gets 7 tries to bring them down in the backfield. That's great. And a lot of these, by the way, it should be noted, when you flip it, it's 100% outrage. Right?
Oh, complete outrage. Complete outrage.
When it is your team who suffers that sack despite having the chance to throw it away and have a 3rd and more manageable. Yeah, there's nothing in between joy and outrage in a lot of these moments.
I have a very obvious replay outcome. And by that, I mean, I'm watching at home. I see it in real time. I call it out in real time as maybe a bad call. And then replay confirms my initial suspicion. There is that sense of getting a category right or an answer right in Jeopardy that goes along with that sensation. So getting it right in real time when the refs didn't.
Ooh, I like that.
That's kind of what I'm going for here. That brings me joy. That makes me feel smart.
An addendum to that is when replay takes literally 11 seconds because it's so obvious and they're just quick. It's rare, but it's wonderful when guy peeks into the screen. Oh yeah, that's not a thing. And comes right back and be like, nah, that wasn't a thing. That was not even close to a fumble, guys. When it's quick, that's pretty joyful. When we all know it and then they're boom, boom. All right, on to the next play. What else you got?
I also have, and this is an old favorite here on the show, but the surprisingly lefty wide receiver.
Yeah. That's a fantasy thing, but yeah.
It's a fantasy thing, but if you're talking about things that give me joy, it's the trick play. First off, any trick play that goes right.
Yes.
Is always kind of like in its own class here. It's its own species as it relates to this question. But in this case, we're talking about the wide receiver pass. The The wide receiver is lefty, maybe played some quarterback in high school. You often hear that.
Mm-hmm.
Always brings me a lot of joy. The other thing that brings me joy, and this is definitely not when my team is playing. What brings me joy is when that receiver gets the ball and knows that he is supposed to peek to see if the guy is open and says, I'm throwing it anyway.
Right.
Doesn't matter if he's open.
Yeah.
I'm a playmaker. I'm going to make a play.
Yes.
And sometimes it goes poorly, but you could always kind of see that moment where he knows he shouldn't throw it, but is going to anyway.
Right.
That gives me joy.
It doesn't bring me joy as much when a player is sort of careless with the like, screw it, I'm throwing it. No, like I appreciate the confidence, but when it's my receiver launching the ball downfield, I'm like, oh, you don't know what you're doing.
Not on your team. Not on your team.
Right.
But
Not on my team.
The reckless abandon with which that pass is almost always thrown.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yes.
Amazing. What do you have? What's on your list?
Oh my God. I have so much on my list.
You have a big list here, I know.
I've got a big old list. Let me bring it up. The joy part of things. All right, here we go. I'll try to go through this quickly. The pick six when a quarterback with a nothing arm tries to throw an out pattern across the field and gives a corner like an hour and a half to break on the ball and he takes it to the house where you know it's going to be an easy interception mid-flight of the ball and you don't even see the corner on the screen. That's wonderful. The specific example, the pop arm, to the field. I remember Oregon had this with, I want to say Matt Sims, Tennessee quarterback Matt Sims, throwing the ball across the field. Cliff Harris. Cliff Harris was almost surprised how easy the interception and pick six was. That brings me great joy when your team has such a huge jump on a pick like that. I have that. All right. I have all passes tipped at the line. I love that. When your team tips a ball and, bats down a ball at the line, but the specific one where it's batted up in the air, like a weirdly high bat up, and you have a solid 3 seconds when all hope seems possible in the world.
Everything's on the table?
Everything's on the table, and somebody large comes down with the ball. Because a lot of the times there's a scramble, and everybody's just trying to knock it down, or nobody can really get two hands up to get their hands on it. But when a large man gets his hand on the ball that goes up 21 and a half feet in the air, when he comes down with it, that's great. Especially if he tips it to himself, that's joyous. When your own nose tackle tips it to himself. Similarly, when a defensive tackle starts to rush the quarterback, but then does the little backpedal into soft, shallow coverage and gets the interception, that's pretty wonderful. When the quarterback's like, there's no way this guy's going to do this, and he's right there. That's great. I'm going to stick simple here. A nasty wide receiver double move that makes the corner slip and fall.
A little sluggo, a little out and up.
That's all day, every day. That makes me so happy that a corner is so fooled that they're behaving like, a Plumlee trying to guard James Harden. That's great to me. Just a simple double move slipperoo. An offensive lineman in the open field out ahead of a screen, just demolishing somebody half of his size, where it's like a safety coming up to try and to block. Name your giant offensive lineman, right? A Chance Warmack or something. That's wonderful. That's Yeah, I mean we can all appreciate that. When an offensive player on my team absorbs a big hit short of the marker, but stays up and drags the defender past.
Yeah.
Ty. That gets my blood pumping. I love that so much. I have here perfect tunnel screens.
Yeah.
What's better than a tunnel screen, Ty? When a tunnel screen is blocked perfectly and the timing is just like quarterback releases it, gets it in front of the receiver, it's a thing of beauty.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
No, what I was going to say is, well, first off, a tunnel screen that's blocked perfectly is
butter.
The site. I mean, it is perfect. I lost my train of thought because we've been going so quickly, but this is fine. This is really good. I've got a bunch here that we got from Patreon folks as well. I don't know how many more you have.
Oh, I've got like 30 more. Let me go through these. Yeah. Quickly.
Well, we've got one here that I think qualifies on a bunch of different fronts. Someone said unexpected greatness, which is very broad.
Yeah. Okay.
It's very broad and could be applied to the overly athletic defensive lineman tipping to himself and running for a touchdown.
Sure.
We've got another one here that says lineman touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
How about strange narratives? Strange Narratives is broader than maybe what you'd see in a game, but
Yeah.
it is definitely something that stems from games, right? The Kansas is good now narrative has been fun.
I get it, but that's not in game. I have no time for
What about kickers and punters making awesome tackles?
that. I do like the touchdown saving shove out of bounds at the 41. That brings me joy. It doesn't. No, it's relief more than joy for me because that's saving something catastrophic when something bad has already happened.
Right.
But if they are making a play like a returner tries to reverse field and it's only the kicker, setting the edge on that kick return, and he makes the play, he makes a form tackle, that's unexpected greatness as well. I'm good with that. That's specific moment greatness. And a kicker rising or a punter rising to the tackling moment, I'm great with. How about the moment when your team succeeds in completing a 4th and goal line stand, and then all 11 dudes start high-stepping down the field and pointing the other way?
They're doing the thing where they're doing the...
They're Xing out their hands.
Yeah.
They're pointing the other way. They're high-stepping. They're posing. That specific isolated moment is a perfect football moment.
Have you ever done the thing? I have, where on whatever your watch situation is, maybe it's appropriate, maybe it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
When you start doing that too?
Oh, of course.
I feel like I do that every time it happens. I don't care.
On that note, Ty, when you believe a DB for the other team interferes with a pass and you mime the throwing the flag out of your belt,
I do that
out of your belt, and then applauding to the DB, even though he's on TV after it's called, and you and the ref are simpatico on the same page, doing the mime and having that justified, that's a pretty great feeling, Ty.
It's a great... Dude, I was doing that during the World Cup. They don't even throw flags at the World Cup.
No, not like that. Nope, just cards.
It's such like muscle memory at this point. You just kind of do it. Some other ones here. We have when a player breaks a tackle and suddenly gets an extra 5 or more yards.
Yeah, that's great.
Always exciting. More folks calling out defensive stops. Someone else just says really just close games between good teams.
No.
Not that into underdog victories, but when I turn on a big 7 p.m. or 2:30 game, I want it to be close. I think all very, very good. Do you want to move on to the next one?
No. I have so many more joyful things, Ty. Specific joyful things. Our listeners, I should have been more specific to our listeners. I have corner blitzes that get home when you see it coming from a mile away, but it's the quarterback's blind side. You're like, oh, that 5'9" dude is about to obliterate that quarterback. I love that. How about a defensive player on like the zone read mesh, tackling both the quarterback and running back just to be safe in the same motion? Difficult to do. You need wingspan, but I love that. I love intercepted screen passes. This, again, is when my team does it, and it's an outrage when my team throws the pick.
Of course.
I have the very specific TV medium crowd shot after a touchdown when they're panning, but the whole screen is filled. The whole frame is filled, and it seems like there are 444,000 people in Lane Stadium because you're like, there are 79 rows in all directions. That's a great shot where you just feel overwhelmed by the number of Hokie fans. An introduction to a telecast with a shot of somebody grilling something just gets me there.
That gets you there.
It gets me in the mood. Yeah. I have your team demolishing an at least decent team on the road and the shot of fans leaving near the end of the third quarter. Just wave to the TV. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye. Yeah. That brings me a ton of joy. A perfect center field safety where he's not fooled by anything. He knows what you're up to. He's just taking care of business deep in center field. I love that. The little moment where a quarterback is scrambling to the edge and has his momentum taking him out of bounds, but manages to throw his hips back toward the field just to wiggle and tiptoe for an extra 3. Yeah. That is such a specifically impressive skill that warms my heart every time I see it when it's a team I'm rooting for.
I was going to say a close cousin of that is the quarterback who tries to do that wiggle.
Yes.
And does so just enough that being obliterated by a defender is a totally clean call.
Right. Totally.
Like, bites off a little bit more than he can chew and just gets destroyed.
When the announcers see a sack coming from a mile away and the quarterback doesn't. So that's sort of the corner blitz thing, but also like, okay, up comes the linebacker, up comes the safety just to the edge, and the announcer's like, oh, this isn't going to be good.
The blind side blitz, yeah.
Right, as there's just the clear path sack, and the announcers know it. You're like, there's nothing that's going to be happening good here. I have the sack where a lineman puts the poor running back between himself and the quarterback as he takes down the quarterback.
The sandwich sack, yeah.
The sandwich sack where the running back is just a prop. He is just a bystander to the inevitable sack. Yeah. I love that.
Deuce Vaughn is trying, but.
Totally.
But. Exactly. That's an issue. We got to move on, Dan. We're not going to have
Why
enough
do we
time
have to move on? I have so many. Okay, we can go to the next thing. So let's just assume when I say what brings you outrage.
How are you feeling now?
All of those things when they happen to your team should bring you outrage and joy when it is your team doing those things. Okay. Yeah. What brings you specific outrage, though, that's sort of in a unique universe, in a bubble?
The one that I think for me stands out above all else is there's two variations of this, but both stem from dumb penalties.
Sure.
The stupid penalty on third down that gives an opponent a free first down and oftentimes free points.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing as a college football fan that I can think of that is more frustrating than that. Especially when it happens to your team, but even when you're watching somebody else's team.
Yep.
That very specific brand of penalty. And it's not always interference. Interference, the stuff that happens in a high-speed game, even though it's frustrating, that's like a little bit more understandable. But
right, sure.
But like the false start or the delay of game. Or
you're talking more procedural than action. Okay.
The stuff that is very easily correctable and rises more to the level of being a mental error.
Sure.
That to me is outrageous. The second version of that, and you see this a lot too, is the team that is experiencing a barrage of crippling penalties. Yep. Right? We see this every year where a team goes into a hostile environment and maybe the line is meshing, or maybe it's just an inexperienced team, but they have something like 11 false start penalties that they just can't overcome. That to me is so frustrating and so outrageous that I have this visceral sense deep into my core that this is not going well for that team. So that's a big one for me.
Can I build on that?
Please.
I go the other way where I wrote this as unnecessary drive extending bailout penalty.
Same thing.
Yes. So you went false start and it's killer and it's procedural, whatever, but it's the late hit on the quarterback who threw a terrible pass on 3rd and 9. Right. And it wasn't going to be complete. No matter what the edge rush or whatever bearing down on him would do, he didn't have a choice. He threw it. It was nowhere near the receiver, but the guy just doesn't pull up. And just the drive extending bailout penalty. So it could be, unnecessary roughness. It could be hitting a guy late out of bounds or something like that, where you're just like, he was so short of the sticks. Why are you shoving him 4 yards on the sideline?
Yeah, I think in general, what we're both feeling here, if I could maybe peel back this layer of the onion.
Yeah.
Penalties deciding games is really frustrating.
That's real tough. Yep.
Penalties, and it's fun when it's your team. Everybody, we're cool with that.
Mm-hmm.
But penalties in general deciding games.
Yeah.
We saw it a little bit in the Super Bowl. I don't want to go too far in the NFL, but penalties deciding games is really frustrating. Really, really a good sense of outrage.
Sure.
What else do you have?
Well, I also have on that same note, just in terms of penalty, the whole targeting thing is interesting because while there is a letter of the law, right, the crown and above the head, all that stuff, right, there are certain boxes that targeting has to check, and it's either a standard or you kick them out. The emotion you feel when you feel like your player has been targeted, which a lot of it is just like, oh, that's clearly targeting. Or, look, it's not a great rule, but this is textbook. You got to call it. Or when it's your team who is accused of targeting, you say to yourself, this isn't what we want football to be. This is ridiculous. Come on. This clean hit. It's amazing how, if you change the colors of the uniform, how different the reaction is. It's just a flipped thing. But yeah, it is also Oregon had, I think, a loss because a player sacked a quarterback in a big moment and then celebrated a little bit too excessively and got called for unsportsmanlike conduct, and that extended the drive. That was tough. That's a tough beat, Ty. So yeah, the drive extending killer bailout penalties might be the worst on my list. You want to know what else I have here?
I would love to, yeah.
Run, pass, power run, fails, goal to go.
Yeah.
Run, pass, power run. That's what we're doing every time? Run, pass, power run? Okay, cool.
A
Awesome.
close cousin of like 3 consecutive fades to the back corner.
Yes. Close cousin. Overthrowing a wide open receiver downfield where the announcers are like already talking about it as if it's a touchdown. We're like, oh, and he's got a man wide. Oh, just a little bit too much mustard on that one.
Yeah.
That's tough. That's tough. That kills a little part of my spleen every time. Throwing short of the sticks on third down. Never going to be okay with it. An all-American first and second down defense, and only on first and second downs. We're just like doing nothing but forcing 3rd and 9s and giving up 3rd and 9s.
There is nothing worse as a college football fan than watching or being forced to watch a defense that is terrible on 3rd downs. That will take years off your life.
Yes.
That will take years off your life. I've experienced that. No college football fan has been in a situation where they haven't experienced that. It's very frustrating.
Close cousin to your finally getting a quarterback down after he evades 3 or 4 dudes. Close cousin to that. Anytime a quarterback is wrapped up and wriggles out of a sack, I want to put my fist through a window. I can't have it. I can't have you take 7 of the natural and necessary 8 steps. You know, getting a good jump on the snap, putting a move on the tackle, whatever, closing, getting a sense for where the quarterback is and, swinging your hips, whatever, and wrapping and sliding down. Can't have it ever. Can't have it ever. Similar cousin to, how about a safety coming up to lay a big hit with his shoulder, but not actually form tackling?
Yeah.
And the guy just bounces off and runs for 10 more yards.
Right.
Seeing that in slow motion.
Trying the hit stick and just not working.
Yep.
I've got one here, and this was actually a common theme among folks who submitted, again, through verballers.com.
Yeah.
A lot of references to conservative play calling. What I called out specifically was the over-conservative punt. So you're inside, like you're on this is like an Iowa thing, right? You're on the 38-yard line, it's too far for a field goal. You don't have much faith in your offense to move the ball 8 yards, 3 yards, whatever it is, and you just decide to punt. You go for the coffin corner punt.
Right.
Which, look, if you've got a good defense, can work out in your favor, but just kind of feels like a little bit of a limp effort. I hate watching
you're not playing
that.
to win. Yeah.
Hate that. I've got refs who get the replay wrong, which is kind of the flip side of what I said earlier, but where you're watching it, maybe it's an overly long replay review, and everybody is seeing it. The announcers are calling it out. They go to, they go to Gene Steratore to get what Gene, get Gene's opinion on the matter. And Dean Blandino, everybody is in agreement that the call should go one way, and then the refs just sort of do their own thing and freelance in a different direction. That's very frustrating to me. I have poorly executed studio shows.
Okay.
Not to call out specific networks.
No, that's okay.
If you've listened to the show before, you know how I feel about some studio shows, CBS, NBC. Excuse me.
Yeah.
But just a really bad studio show, despite the fact that they're paying millions to have the rights to these games.
Well, what makes a bad studio show, Ty?
First off, if they don't add anything to the broadcast, right?
Okay.
The studio show exists, in my eyes, for two reasons. First off, to update me and show highlights around the world of college football. What else is going on out there that I need to know about while I am focused on this football game? That's the first thing. And most of them do that. The second is provide some actual insight into the game at hand, into the game that we're watching. And, I just feel like in some instances, they turn it into kind of a sideshow. In other instances, they kind of do enough to just hit the bare minimum, but don't inject any emotion into it.
Right.
And it's the kind of thing where you'd almost be better served to go on ESPN.com and read the box score.
Sure.
Give me inject some of this emotion that we're talking about here into the studio show. Give me chemistry. Give me something that makes me want to watch through halftime.
Man, I just keep hearing you talk about Tony Dungy without saying his name. Okay.
I'm not saying Tony Dungy. I'm just saying, so we've seen it with a couple networks now. They have not yet cracked the studio show on college football when they're on college football duty.
The feeling when you're watching your team struggle in some way and they're not getting the ball to the obvious guy to get the ball to, when you find yourself on the couch saying, you have Devin A-Chain on your team. Give the ball to that feeling where a star player who could change the complexion if you creatively found ways in the passing game, in the run game, in direct snaps, whatever, to get him the ball, and lack of touches it drives me bonkers when I'm watching my specific team, when watching Oregon, and some game changer is just not seeing any action. Hate that. How about this? And this I might say is my number one, because I've experienced it in big moments as an Oregon fan. We've all experienced it watching our teams. You can't get to any of these places in a play without the center snapping the ball to a quarterback.
Yeah.
You give me a bad snap, I snapped. You give me a bad snap in a key moment, and it's I was going to say you have one job, but no, centers have more than one jobs. But you give me a bad snap where we can't even see what the quarterback could do with the opportunity to throw the ball downfield in this huge moment, and the center snaps it over his head, or there's some sort of miscommunication where the center snaps it like a rogue missile at the numbers on the quarterback's chest.
Yeah.
Bad snaps, bad snapping communication. You know, the quarterback all of a sudden decides to change the play and is yelling at the slot receiver, and that's when the center thinks he has the cadence, and there's some sort of miscommunication. And
it's just a heat-seeking missile that hits him in the helmet and bounces astray.
I'm inconsolable after a big moment bad snap. Absolutely.
All right, so we're going to move on to the next one, but real quick, a few of the other ones that came in that I think are really funny. This one's really good. Somebody wrote in about when announcers jinx the college kicker.
Yep.
By saying that they have made X number of kicks in a row, and then the kicker actually misses the kick.
Mm-hmm.
That happens a lot, and that's very, very frustrating.
Yep.
It does make you wonder if the occult forces of college football are real or not real. We've got a bunch here that discuss, in general, the topic of game mismanagement, but specifically clock mismanagement.
Yes.
Right? The late game James Franklin stuff, or teams in general who don't seem to understand how the clock works later on in the game, you know, in the fourth quarter. Right?
Coaches
they don't know that when you go out of bounds, the clocks can start running again at some point.
Yeah,
like all these little things, how teams end up wasting time down the stretch, key seconds that could help them win.
Nothing worse than doing the timeout hand motion to the TV and going increasingly faster when your coach is not. The coach who believes in rollover timeouts, thinking they're getting them into next season or next week. Awful.
Yeah. The mismanaged timeout here, I think, is the cream of the crop. Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
What gives you hope?
A quick, unexpected touchdown, right? A broken play touchdown. You're down 20, and it's a scoop and score. It's a special teams touchdown. You need something quick to give you hope. The other thing, which does not feel super nice to say out loud.
How are you feeling now?
Yeah.
Quarterback gets hurt.
Yeah.
Opposing quarterback gets hurt. You're like, I don't want that. I never want that to happen. But if you're talking about who I really am at my core, if Oregon is playing in a big game and so-and-so quarterback for USC or for Ohio State or for whoever, their starting quarterback goes down early, and I don't think going into the game Oregon has much of a chance, suddenly I'm like, well, I hope he's fine, but just fine tomorrow.
Right. Like, not a head injury.
No, of course not.
Maybe
Rolls
just
an
like
ankle.
A tweaked hammy or cramping or something that will resolve.
Yeah.
Right?
Something that's specifically his fault. He cramps up because he's not properly hydrated. It's not because he takes a crazy hit. It's something that's easily correctable next week.
Right.
Yeah, that's all. That's honestly, I don't hate an opposing quarterback going down if it's not a head injury and it's something ultimately, you know, I'm not going to tell you that. That's who I am. I'm too late for me to change, Ty. I'm in my mid to late 30s. Here is who I am. What do you have?
There are many things that bring me hope. There are two things that I called out on my list.
Okay.
The first is always and will remain the promising recruit with no actual gameplay experience.
Yeah.
Okay. So, as we've said here before, as they said in Ted Lasso, in college football, it is the hope that kills you.
Yeah, it's freshmen.
Right. The promise, the allure of the 5-star, of the 4-star prospect who could change it all.
Mm-hmm.
But he's never played at this level.
Never played. And he's 17.
So,
yeah.
So maybe not. That's the first thing. The second thing, and this really does, if you want to peel back the onion and get to the core of what makes me me,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll know this because we've done this show for 15 seasons now.
Yeah.
I am superstitious.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 100% superstitious. I've tried to get away from it. I'd like to believe that as I've gotten older and wiser, I've gotten away from the ridiculousness that is my own superstition. But I am not ashamed of it, especially when it works. So for me, the most obvious way that I could call this out is when I am watching a game up at Mama H's big Notre Dame game, and I find what I believe is a particularly lucky seating arrangement.
Okay.
And Mama H is in her chair. I'm in mine. Maybe it doesn't go well, and I said, we got to switch.
Mm-hmm.
We got to switch. Maybe somebody else is there on occasion. We've had family members there. They think I'm nuts. It's fine. But then we find the right combination.
Mm-hmm.
There's a long run.
Your feng shui
big
for
defensive stop.
Winning football. Yeah.
A third down sack.
Uh-huh.
And in that moment, obviously the game comes down to where we're sitting.
Oh, of course. Of course.
Watching together in the living room. So what brings me hope is finding that successful, that very charmed seating arrangement while watching a game with Mama H in particular.
Will you try to manifest things in your head during a game?
Oh, yeah.
So so that process is it's not necessarily giving yourself hope. It's
Right.
you talking yourself into a certain scenario of A, B, C, and D in the second half. Like, no, they're not out of this because they hit those early couple passes. So you know they have something in the playbook that's given Ohio State a little bit of trouble. And so you will sit there and manifest. What's the book? The Secret, right? Where you're just over and over in your head playing out the good things that are about to happen, and that's what makes them happen. You're putting that energy into the universe.
The two versions of this. The first is the more public and more embarrassing version, which is I just post all this to Twitter.
Yeah, of course.
And like sometimes I'm right, or sometimes Old Takes Exposed finds it, which has happened before, and that's just sort of the cost of doing business here.
Yeah.
The second is when I really get like even deeper than we are right now, where I believe in that moment, perhaps at halftime, when I may be feeling the alcohol a little bit, when I believe that maybe I can talk to the Force from Star Wars,
right?
Or maybe I have some sort of inner energy a la Dragon Ball Z, and I can harness it and I can put my thoughts into the ether, and that it can affect my. That hasn't really worked to my knowledge,
right?
But there are moments where I'm right and it feels good, and I often overlook the fact that I'm being a little overly dramatic about it, but just being a fan.
I am a big believer in the idea that possessions are priceless, that you have a finite number every game and you have to do everything you can to maximize them. And I'm not going to say in a defensive-ish type back and forth that field goals are failures. But in any other scenario, especially when it's pretty clear early on that field goals aren't going to win a game, and the opposing coach kicks it from the 19 on 4th and 3 or something like that, which is just that old school announcer football head. You got to take the points, Ty. You got it. When a coach takes the points in a game that it's pretty clear that you're not going to beat Alabama with field goals, and that coach takes the field goal early on an otherwise opportunity to keep the ball moving. Yeah. It gives me hope. I mean, you mentioned the conservative 4th down decision making, 4th and 1 midfield. If a coach is giving away possessions or a coach decides to take a field goal in a touchdown fight, that gives me hope, because down the line you're going to look back at the possessions and how you did or didn't take advantage, and it's going to come down to something close, and that coach deciding to take the points ultimately loses you games.
This is a great one that we got from our Verballerhood. Again, we put a post out on Patreon at verballers.com asking people to just fill out this survey. Somebody said, and we got other answers that I think are akin to this.
Please.
How about the chemistry among the players during spring practice and or fall camp? This is like an athletic special. This is
good.
something that this is the article that every beat writer has to write. They're like contractually obligated to write about the chemistry, the culture, guys buying in. It means, I mean, it's not meaningless, but in the grand scheme, it really means nothing. But it is the kind of thing that gives you just unbridled hope about where the season could go. The fact that the players and the coaches and they're all on the same page. You hear that a lot. That type of stuff. Spring's eternal.
I can give you a very specific, I can go even deeper. If you show me something about, and this again is my team, but I think it would be true for anybody. You show me something in mid-August about how the entire team went like whitewater rafting, or they went and played paintball,
bumper cars.
They all had a cookout at the head coach's house. You give me that off-site retreat energy in fall camp, like, ooh, this is a special squad, guys. Forget about those NC State teams, those Minnesota teams of yore. This year's team just had fun with Super Soakers.
Yeah.
That will always get me, as in like, all right. And I'm putting myself squarely in this camp. I'm not making fun of anybody, because every fall camp, when I see that, like, oh, guys, they put on a bunch of sumo suits and had a blast. This year's team is built different. And then they gave up a 21-point lead to Oregon State when the Beavers just ran straight at them for the entirety of the second half. Yeah.
Here's another good one.
Yeah.
Looking far too in advance at an easier schedule.
Of course.
The allure of the easy schedule.
Yeah. No tough home road splits, no tough back-to-backs. That's nice.
We do that often in like April.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
In fact, we will do a show about that in April.
I'm sure we will.
We did a show last year and the year prior.
Yeah.
Ranking schedules, looking at some of those hidden gems that might be on the schedule.
Yeah. Oh, man. How about, the hope of a big recruiting weekend? Like, oh, they're going to be up for this one, guys. And there's so much juice. That's tough. That's a tough beat when you know that your team fully collapsed in front of a bunch of key recruits.
Let's take a steer in a slightly different direction.
Okay.
What makes you bloodthirsty as a fan?
See, I only have one thing here. I've only listed one thing.
I have one thing with 3 parts. Can you play the sound? Just
How are you feeling now?
Yeah, the bloodthirst that you feel as a fan is personal to each and every one of us. What does it for you?
It doesn't. I'm not proud of who I am in this specific moment.
Yeah.
And it's only one moment, well, maybe 2, but generally just 1 per game. Opening kickoff coverage, more often than not, I will stand up as the ball crosses in the air, ball crosses through the return team, settles near the end zone, whatever, for the catch. As soon as the player catches it, or maybe even a little bit before, I will stand up from my comfortable couch and yell out loud to nobody in particular, "Kill him." Now, let me be clear. I don't want players seriously injured. I understand the point that the kickoff is the most dangerous play in sports, and by admitting that I stand up and say kill him, that might be a good enough reason to abolish the kickoff. I'm open to all of those things. But there is something in my marrow that makes me stand up and say kill him, as if knocking, I don't want him hurt. I want him to be totally fine. I never want injuries. The idea of killing him is merely somebody breaks through the protection team and just levels him at the 12. Because I believe if you do that, that sets a tone for the rest of the game without any evidence supporting this. My most excited moment, maybe, and you can have it at the start of the second half. It's not the same. You open up a game destroying the returner, not hurt, but you fulfill my goal of killing him, quote unquote, killing him. It sends electricity through my veins, Ty. It does.
If we're going to do a bit of self-reflection,
yeah,
things that we're not always that proud of,
kill him.
Maybe I can do the same.
Please.
My answer here is digital idiots.
Digital idiots? Okay.
Digital idiots. And there's 3 versions of the digital idiot. The first is my group of friends. I don't know what your friends are like, Dan. I don't know if your
we
friends...
send each other duck emojis before kickoff. Just keep it nice and simple.
I happen to have a group of friends that hates Notre Dame and knows that I'm a big Notre Dame fan.
Are they Penn State people?
There are Penn State people,
Okay.
all of whom hate Notre Dame, and that's fine.
Yeah.
You either love them or you hate them.
Mm-hmm.
But the text messages, the constant push-pull of, I want to be part of this text thread because these are my best friends in the world.
Yeah.
And also, I don't want it to make it appear as if I am at all perturbed by what they're saying about Notre Dame, but deep down I am.
Yeah.
And I just like, oh, that gets me going. The second is that very specific group of folks who comment on the shows.
Yeah.
Send us emails, and we both have to deal with this. But the people who say you should do your homework.
Yeah, of course. Oh, that gets you going. That's so specific to us as people who never do homework. Yeah.
But I mean, like, we're a national show.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of homework. Most of what we do is homework. That's sort of the
So
secret.
this isn't specific to a game. You just want to you want to hunt people down, find their IP addresses, and kidnap them.
Leave out the kidnap part, but everything else I'm open to.
Yeah.
But we're going to miss things. Well, it's just the nature of what we do. There's 130 teams.
I didn't know that we were going to go here. Okay.
Yeah. So we're going to miss stuff. We're a two-man operation.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to miss things, but it just happens. It's just kind of the nature of this beast. When I get a note like that, my first response is always to vehemently root against the team of the commenter.
Yeah.
We had this a lot with Oklahoma.
You take it
people this past
personally.
year.
Yeah.
I do I get it. I don't want to be wrong. I take that stuff very hard because I'm a perfectionist, excuse me.
Right.
But when somebody is like, you didn't do your homework, and I did, and I just can't really prove it until the things like play themselves out, that gets me going. That's when I start rooting against a team.
Do you know I get that email almost every week from Mama H, from your mother? You don't know about Notre Dame. Why didn't you talk about Isaiah Foskey more? No, she doesn't sound like that, and she never sends me emails like that. She's a very nice lady. It doesn't bother me that much. People love their teams, and
it doesn't bother me that much. It doesn't change anything I do.
Yeah,
it doesn't bother me that much. But
I know it takes a lot to bother you.
It does. I would be lying to you face to face, which is not something I want. We're all friends here.
Yeah,
being honest here on this show. This is a college football therapy session.
Yeah, this is your livelihood. Yeah,
I would be lying if I said that there are moments where that does not bother me.
Of course.
Because I know what we put into this.
Yeah. And
when you write to me with a message like that, and I know what I put into it, I'm going to root against your team.
Right.
That's why I was secretly rooting against Oklahoma all year.
Now, 2015 tie? Well, we'll have a conversation. Now, current tie is just blanketing information here. Do you have any Notre Dame friends? This is sort of similar to your first point. Do you have any Notre Dame, like, self-loathing Notre Dame fan friends who, like, during games, like, ruin the actual back and forth because they're so down on things? Where you're just like, why don't you just take a step back and stop being like an idiot here?
I don't have. So this
do
is
not. Do you not have non-self-loathing Notre Dame fans?
Right.
Yeah.
So this is not so much a Notre Dame fan thing.
Okay.
I have one friend in particular, a fellow Penn Stater, who is the most self-loathing Penn State fan.
Yeah.
Is the most self-loathing Penn State fan.
One thing goes wrong. One quarter goes wrong. Yeah.
Has never liked James Franklin.
Yeah.
Never in a million years would it's a little bit of like the Randy Quaid thing in Major League One, or Major League Two, I guess. Excuse me, where very clearly has issue with the team.
Right.
And just can't get past it. This guy in particular has never gotten past the fact they hired James Franklin, just didn't like him.
Right.
Didn't want him to hire him. Always wants somebody else to be the coach. And so anytime something is going right for Penn State, he finds a way to make that glass half empty.
Right. Yeah. It's I have a couple of Oregon people who are just like in the middle, and they do it sarcastically. They don't do it because they feel the emotion of it. They do it just as a defense mechanism to say, like, bring back Mark Helfrich. Like, this is not helping. Yeah. You are not making this game more enjoyable. This experience is not more fun communicating with you. That's all.
Dan, what makes you obnoxiously confident?
Oh, see, this is great. This is great. Getting off the field on third downs. If I watch an Oregon game, and maybe this is because of the baggage and scar tissue I have watching Don Pelham and Brady Hoke and, a bunch of Oregon defenses that have disappointed, you get off the field quickly on successive drives, I feel like I can fly, Ty. That makes me extremely confident as a college football fan. I mentioned the opposing coach punting on 4th and short at midfield. That also just makes me just like another level in terms of the emotions I feel. And the other one, it's very basic. And I apologize for the language here. Earmuffs. Running the shit out of the ball. If you are running the shit out of the ball, and I'm not saying running well, I'm not saying having a sound game plan, I'm not saying varying things up, I am saying the very specific moments where your team has done this. And doesn't happen all that often unless you're like 2 or 3 different teams. And even still, running the shit out of the ball makes you feel invincible as a fan. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
There is perhaps no greater tease as a college football fan than your team getting the ball first and scoring quickly and easily on the first drive.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's hope and obnoxiously confident.
Quickly and easily on the first. I'm not talking a 14-play drive. I'm talking 5 plays, 68 yards. Quarterback hits a guy who's open on a wheel, slips through coverage.
Yeah, of course.
And then a running back gets you down to the goal line.
Yeah.
Very quickly.
Break up the team.
A minute and a half, 5 plays, scoring, especially bonus points here if it's against a ranked opponent.
Yeah.
There is nothing that is a bigger tease than that. Nothing that leaves you feeling with that sense like you're flying.
Of course. More
than that. And oftentimes, in my case, it's come back to bite me.
Right. It's a great opening script. And
it's like, oh, man, they got him figured out.
Yeah.
And then, like, you see this often against teams like Alabama or Georgia, right? Whatever damage the opponent's going to do, they're going to do it in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then after that, forget it.
Yeah.
It's over. We'll get to the hopeless part of this conversation.
Yep.
A little bit later here. Some other answers that we got from the Verballerhood. Someone says betting the under in any Iowa game.
Okay.
How about a defensive line just straight up taking over a game, Dan?
That's always great. That is always wonderful. It doesn't mean your team's going to win, but obnoxiously confident that the 4 guys we brought to the party are going to be better than the 5 guys you brought to the party all night long. That's a great, great feeling.
Success on third downs, much to your point, is another one that we got. Here we go, the off season.
Yeah.
No matter what happens, I can always spin whatever happened in the offseason into extreme optimism. Great answer.
What about the feeling as your team runs off the field at half, scoring with 3 seconds left and knowing you're getting the ball back to start the second half?
The whole middle 8 thing?
The middle 8 thing, but forget even like fully capitalizing and scoring twice, getting the ball back after halftime because you deferred to the second half and scoring right before half. Just the feeling of, man, should they kick the field goal? Man, I don't know if they're playing this right. And they play it perfectly and they get 6 right before the half, knowing you're getting the ball. So that's the confidence thing at the half. And you get to sit in that just wonderful, wonderful stew of optimism all half long. That's a great feeling.
Having an elusive quarterback. There we go. I like this one a lot. It feels good to see defenders frustrated when they just can't tackle the passer and know that they're going to get yelled at on the sidelines. Yeah, the elusive passer making a couple appearances in today's episode.
Yep. I love that.
Right. Let's move on. Why don't we go to what makes you hopeless, Dan?
Okay. Not stopping the run with stacked boxes. There's just nothing you can do. There's literally those are all of the players we are allotted to have on the field on defense, and they cannot stop the very basic things that other team is doing. That makes me pretty hopeless. The other one is when the coaches don't trust a backup quarterback and it's all screens and hitches. We're like, oh, no, we don't think he can read a defense. Oh, no. We're not throwing into cover 2. No. We're not throwing the ball downfield. He's not going to be able to look off a safety. When that becomes clear in the middle of the first quarter, you're just like, well, you throw up your clipboard and you're like, you know what? Maybe I should go for a jog. This is not productive, me sitting here for the next 2.5 hours, because if the guys on the sideline don't think number 7 has it in him to throw it 11 yards consistently, what am I doing here? What am I doing on this couch?
Somebody says fumbles.
Yeah.
Fumbles.
Yeah,
Just
they can go both
fumbles.
ways. Yeah.
Fumbles is a really good one. Another person says pick six. Turnovers definitely leave
Of
people
course.
feeling hopeless. The one that I called out, and it's sort of related to the whole quarterback, the elusive quarterback thing. But quarterbacks just in general with too much time.
Oh my
With
God.
too much time
Oh
to
my
throw.
God. When they're just, I have that down here somewhere.
And I'm not talking about Mike Vick in the pocket. I'm not talking about Caleb Williams dancing around, but
Right.
I'm just talking about when you flip a game on, it absolutely applies to your team if you're watching it. But I think it just, in general, it's a broader frustration for fans because...
See, I have that under outrage. Continue.
Yeah, in a lot of cases, you're tuning into another game. Let's just say it's not Oregon or Notre Dame or Penn State.
Right.
You're tuning into another game, rooting for it to be close, rooting for an upset, just rooting for some entertainment value, right? That's the reason we watch this thing to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
There are fewer things more frustrating than being in that headspace,
Oh my God.
being ready to watch that in like a big top 10 matchup, maybe on CBS,
Mm-hmm.
and just seeing nothing but pitch and catch. Nothing but pitch and catch. There is no pass rush. There is no coverage because there's no pass rush.
Right. Of course.
Whatever the quarterback is, whoever he is, has his pick of the litter
Right.
and all day to throw the football. There is nothing more hopeless than that. We have another question that we'll get to if we have time here.
When it gets to the point where Joel Klatt or Kirk Herbstreit or any RG3 is saying something like, man, they have all
All
the
day.
time in the world.
Or how about
there."
this?
Yeah.
How about this? The play is still ongoing.
Yeah.
And
oh,
the
yeah, no,
play-by-play
it's
man
during.
says all day to throw. When they call it out in
He's
the
got
moment.
all day. He's still back there. Yeah.
What I was going to say is we have another question that we might get to here about what makes you turn it off,
Right.
turn a game off. A game where one quarterback has just unlimited time to throw the football kind of rises to that level for me.
Of course. Yeah.
Hopeless.
It's and then another sub corollary category, codicil, whatever, is 3rd and 11. They're rushing 3, and the quarterback has all the time in the world. Rushing 3 is great when somebody can get home. When one of those 3 guys can beat a double team or whatever and get some pressure. But knowing you don't have the ability to get pressure and you're just like, you know what? We're just going to drop everybody back to stand around in a very soft zone and have the quarterback pick us apart every time. The rushing 3 thing it's so deflating when it's your team. Maybe it doesn't even make you outraged. Maybe it just makes you feel like I'm a North Carolina fan.
Yeah. Here we go. A
Yeah.
sinking feeling that your team's about to blow a big lead. That's a good one. That comes to us via, again, verballers.com.
That's tough because you should be happy in that moment, right? We're up 13, right? All we need to do is keep it going. But in the back of your mind, you're like, this is just not going to last.
And
It's
a
just not.
close cousin of that is being down 10, but knowing you have no chance of winning.
Yes. Where
That's
there
a
is
very
a
good
finish
one.
line. It's 2 scores. Get something weird. Get a turnover and a touchdown, and there you are. But you also just 10 points might as well be 30. Yeah.
We've got another one here that I think leads me to our next question. Someone says, a particularly bad first game of the season.
That's tough. Where you're staring down a long autumn. Yeah.
You put in this poll that we posted, what makes you lightly violent?
Yeah.
Before putting that in the poll, I looked up synonyms for lightly violent, and I figured lightly violent is probably the best way to put it. But what makes you want to throw the remote control?
Yeah.
What makes you want to hit a pillow?
Mm-hmm.
That type of thing, right? Or look at the drywall and think, should I punch this? I've been there.
Right.
That sort of thing. I'm not even a confrontational person, but we all have those moments when we're watching college football. What makes you? You're not a very violent person.
No, I'm not. And by the way,
Neither one of us is. But what kind of gets you up to this line?
the bad snaps. It is the bad snaps. If I see bad snaps, big moment, small moment, whatever, that will make me throw a remote control. The other thing is the third down stuff, because there is something that works into, okay, you get to third down, you get to 3rd and 8. You don't necessarily have a great pass rush. Your corners aren't necessarily great. Your defensive coordinator, but all you need is a college quarterback to be a little bit less than good, right? To just throw the ball a little bit behind somebody, and you give up the scramble for 11 on 3rd and 10, and it happens. You give up multiple 3rd and long conversions on the same drive. I don't know, those AA batteries might be popping up under the couch somewhere. It's not great for me and my remote then.
Somebody writes in 2013 national championship. My dad went to Florida State. We were all watching the game. Auburn takes an 18-point lead. In that moment, when everything felt like it was falling apart, I slammed my fist into the foot support of the recliner. The force of it broke the wood.
Yeah.
I try not to be violent at all during games now.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't gotten close to that since. Here's my story time, Dan. You've heard the story before.
Yep.
But the correct answer to this question is an unexpected week 1 loss.
Yep.
That's what makes
tough.
me lightly violent.
Where you've already penciled in the W. Yep.
The date was September the 4th, 2004.
Mm-hmm.
I graduated from Penn State in May of that year.
Yeah.
So I had done a return trip up to State College. Penn State played and obliterated, I think it was Akron.
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend who was still there. He was on like the 6 or 7 year plan. So I always had a place to crash. We went out, tailgated all day, watched the Akron game, immediately went to the bars right afterwards. And we're out all night. You know how it is when you're like 22.
A youth. Yeah.
A youth, right? When I could still hang. Watched the later games when we were out, even hung around for the late games, of which Notre Dame versus BYU was one of them.
Okay.
Notre Dame went into the game as a 6-point road favorite against BYU. They lost that game 20-17. It was one of the more frustrating games I've ever seen. I went back, I found the box score. They rushed for 11 yards that game. And one of the big questions coming into that season, I mean, I'm maybe dating myself a little bit
This
here.
is Ty Willingham?
This is the end of the Ty Willingham experience.
Yeah.
But one of the big questions going into that season was why are they going to be able to run the ball, right? Because I think Julius Jones, if memory serves, had just graduated. It was like, what is this ground game going to look like? And it was clearly not very good.
Mm-hmm.
In that moment, it was so utterly infuriating to me. And I told the story many times, you know this, but I'll tell it again. I had one of those old LG flip phones. One of the old LG flip phones that I did a full-on Rob Gronkowski spike with in the middle of the Rathskeller, just off of College Avenue. And surprisingly did not get kicked out of the bar.
Right.
I probably should have been in that moment.
Did you just throw somebody's phone? Like, no, it was mine, sir.
I smashed my own phone into about 1 million pieces.
Yeah.
And just left it there. Watched the end of whatever other games we were watching and then stormed off and dealt with the aftermath afterwards. Thankfully, I have not had a whole lot of moments like that. That was the most extreme that I think I've gotten, but definitely created a little bit of a scene in the middle of a bar and surprisingly did not get kicked out.
I'll say this. Low point for you, for sure, as a fan. But I always enjoy the TV shows from the early to mid 2000s where it's like a drug cartel, mafia something, where there's a lot of burner phones. And after a very important call on a burner phone, they snap the flip phone, pop the SIM card out, throw it into a microwave. I love the whole idea of the quick call, snap, zap. I love that plot point in anything I watched because I appreciate the necessary steps taken to end the trace. I think on The Wire they did that a lot, especially with the trackable SIM cards and everything like that, where they'd, throw the SIM card into the river or something like that after the call. It's great.
We have a lot of stuff here about bad calls, bad timeouts. Losing the national championship game, I think would definitely do that. Somebody says the slow mesh, which I couldn't agree more.
Yep. Ty, what brings you relief in down moments?
How are you feeling now?
Definitely not calling Mama H.
Okay. Yeah.
Because her and we're very simpatico. And oftentimes it's worse for her after a big loss. A couple things. First off, misery loves company, so other teams losing is great for this.
That's great. Making sure somebody perhaps more high profile than your team has embarrassed themselves more thoroughly today so that your team's embarrassment gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. I love that answer. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's the first one.
Uh-huh.
The second, I would say, if I'm really zoomed out, the fact that Solid Wife Kate does not give a flying F about college football is very helpful.
Yeah.
It's a very timely reminder that sports and college football is not the only thing in the world. So that's a good way. I also really enjoy, and this is after, in many cases, like 12 hours to fully process a rather disappointing performance. I take great joy in the recap article that David Hale does for ESPN.com.
Okay. Specific. I like that.
Which it's very specific, but it is aggressively tongue in cheek. And I think the perfect reminder that the whole sport is really ridiculous.
Yeah, of course.
Like, we're doing this full time. The sport is ridiculous. Each and every week, it never ceases to amaze me how it outdoes itself. And I think David's column is just sort of a great reminder of that. Every week, he puts a lot into that. And that, to me, before, like, as I'm trying to get into the right headspace, oftentimes we record on early on a Sunday morning. That's a good way to kind of start my crash course that I do before we hit record.
I have down here sugar. If things get really bleak, and I'm not talking Oregon losing to Georgia 49-7 or whatever. If it is an unexpected out of nowhere loss, because here's my take. Hopelessness is actually kind of good, right? That I'd much rather lose 49-7 than 35-34. That hurts. The Georgia game was never winnable. The idea that, like, oh, this isn't going to be a game and it's only a quarter and a half in, that's okay. Because you just kind of, you have the answers to the test. You know what's happening here. It's all clear to everybody. The thing, if something is unexpected loss, if it is ugly at the end, if it's bad timeout usage and bad snaps and everything like that, if I were a Michigan fan after the bad punt snap game.
Oh, man, that's brutal.
I would get a bag of M&Ms that very clearly marks it to be like sharing size, family size, party size.
Right.
I would get a bag of peanut M&Ms and just sit there grumbling to nobody in particular. Michigan State. That's my way of coping. I'll tackle my children. That's always good. It makes me feel like a big, strong boy because they're small. And I have control over the situation, which I didn't during that loss. And it's just good perspective. They're giggling and having a good time. So that makes things a little bit better. I'll exhale obnoxiously a lot. I'll just sit on the couch with the TV off, and it's just a lot of... Or I'll just make content. I'll just make a video. And so hopefully other fans of the team I happen to root for find solace in the fact that they're not alone, I'm not alone, and I'll turn it into... like alchemy, some sort of bit of video reaction stuff. That, at least talking it out, makes me feel a little bit better.
Got a bunch of very interesting answers here. Someone says the Dr. Pepper commercials, not a sponsor.
Could be.
My dogs, which is a great answer. Heroic efforts like an edge who keeps giving the quarterback fits despite the fact that you're down 21, or the running back who refuses to go down against a clearly better defense.
Yeah. Do you know what the worst answer is, Ty? The worst thing that you can feel to bring yourself relief after losing a heartbreaking game is taking solace in the fact that your school's academics are superior to the team who just beat you. That's the worst answer. Yeah. That's the least relatable answer. Otherwise, all answers are valid.
Yeah, somebody here says beer.
Okay.
Alcohol, that type of thing. Good individual plays that show the team might have some success in its future.
Oh, I don't have that kind of perspective at all.
No, I don't. That's a brighter person than us. Okay.
What is the saddest thing? You talked about the most lightly violent thing you've done after a loss. Have you ever taken the sad shower after a loss?
Oh, man.
Have you ever gone for a sad walk around the neighborhood?
Yeah.
I actually think that's probably a healthy thing to just go out and get some fresh air.
I did the sad walk after I found out that Brian Kelly was leaving Notre Dame.
Really?
I did.
You just needed to process it. Okay.
My head was going a million different directions.
Okay.
And That's not even to say I'm the world's biggest Brian Kelly fan.
But you win a bunch of games. It's a whole, you feel deserted.
Yeah, it threw the entire Notre Dame program into a bit of turmoil. And I remember distinctly going on a walk. I was on the phone with Mama H. I had the AirPods in.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember saying, Mom, I think he might go. He's not going to go to LSU. Why would he go to? I said, I don't know. People online seem to think that this is just the way they're talking about it. They wouldn't talk about it this way if they weren't sure that he was going. No, he's not going to go. I was very unnerved by that.
Yeah.
And he left. And, I think it'll be okay. He's done okay at LSU. I think Marcus Freeman's done okay at Notre Dame. But that was the most recent sad walk I took because of college football.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, we'll get into this in part 2 when it's more team specific, and we want to get we'll go public and verballers.com with this, I think, where we'll just get very specific, like what game made you take a sad walk, a sad nap, a sad shower, eat a sad, drink a sad milkshake, something that like made you physically have to console yourself. We're keep it G-rated. I have a couple of Oregon games in mind where I was like, I need to somehow get away from this couch and distract myself somehow. But yeah, the positive ones are comically sized peanut M&Ms, tackling my children, and just sitting there, just bathing in the sadness. Yeah.
Bathing in the sadness.
Yeah.
Here is the final one. Why don't we ask
Please.
this one and then we'll leave it at this. What makes you turn off a game, Dan?
It's that overwhelmed backup quarterback thrust into a game against, like, I remember watching no game seems longer, by the way. Your quarterback goes down in the first quarter. You know that there's no good answer behind him. You're playing a good team, and you just know there's no game that will take longer than that. That will be a 5.5-hour game in your mind, watching this baby giraffe try to run an offense. And so I have a couple of times over the years just said, you know what? I know where this is going. I don't need to spend the next 3 hours I don't care if anybody in the universe thinks I'm a bad fan for turning it off, and I don't have hope, right? You just kind of have watched enough to know where it's going, where you're just like, you know what? I'm going to watch a different game. You know what? Yeah. I'm going to go elsewhere. I'm going to go for a run. That has happened.
I wrote down the air of inevitability.
Yes, totally.
Yeah, which I think is very, very common if you're watching an Alabama game or a Georgia game as of late. Those are two very, very common examples. Another good example that happened to me recently, and it's not college. I mean, maybe we're on a little bit of an NFL kick here with the Super Bowl, but I watched the Giants-Eagles playoff game a few weeks ago. I'm a Giants fan. That game was over after the first 2 possessions. And I've never been so sure of anything in my life.
Right.
And I said to Kate, I'm like, I'm not going to watch the rest of this. Like, right. I know exactly what is going to happen from this point forward. So
of course.
that moment when it feels like the game is over, seemingly before it even starts, that's when I cash out. That's when it's like, you know what? Now, we also are not the target audience for this question because we can't really, if we're turning off one game, that usually means.
Yeah, I'm saying your specific team's game. Yeah.
Yeah,
so you're watching a Notre Dame game, and you don't want to keep watching it. You'll just flip over to Bedlam or whatever.
Yeah,
and
like another great example.
Yeah,
2012 or 2013, whenever it was that Notre Dame played Alabama in the Orange Bowl for the national championship, and I just fell asleep after it was 21-7, whatever, in the first quarter.
Yeah, no,
when you sense that it's already over, that's what does it for me.
Have you ever reached a point in a season, and you don't need to be specific to Notre Dame or Penn State or anybody, but when your team, they just clearly don't have it that year, and potential plans come up that if they were good, you'd be like, well, Notre Dame's playing USC. I can't swing that specific Saturday. Can we do Friday night? Can we do the following week? But if you reach the point in a season where watching your team lose is not worth the battle to stay home and watch that game. Like, I remember when Oregon was playing Michigan State in the Red Box Bowl, might have been Mario's first or second year or something as a head coach, where I was like, I don't like where this is heading. And we got asked to go eat Chinese food early on New Year's Eve. You know what? That sounds more fun. I'll just DVR'd and watch it after the fact. Like I'd much rather eat good Chinese food than watch and that game ended 7-6, I want to say. Yeah. Right? Yeah. I think that was a 7-6 game or something, 10-7, and I was very happy to eat all of those Dan noodles or whatever. So that has happened before where I'm just like, you know what? I'd actually rather do this other non-football thing than watch this somewhat disappointing football thing.
Well, look, we had a great
Have you
number
had
of
that?
answers
Have
here.
you had that, by the way?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We appreciate everybody writing in with their feedback here. Maybe we'll find some way to post all the answers that we got out on Patreon, because we really do appreciate everybody kind of giving us their 2 cents here, peeling back the onion of their own fandom, giving us an idea for what makes them tick as college football fans. Part 2 is coming up on Thursday.
Yes.
It will be a little bit more team specific. We will make sure we post another poll for people who are on verballers.com. We may post some of those publicly as well to get the feedback from the general public, the general verballerhood that's out there, not subscribing to the Patreon. Again, verballers.com is where you can go if you want early access to our episodes, you want to vote in polls, you want to get access to Discord, the whole 9 yards. You've heard us say that a million times. If you don't do that, that's fine. Just make sure you hit subscribe or follow whatever your podcasting app of choice gives you access to, because we're going to be here at least twice a week all throughout the offseason, Dan.
Yeah.
Like I said, part 2 coming up on Thursday. This has been fun. We don't get to do shows like this that often. All too often it's focused very specifically on news or scores or that type of thing. But when we really get to pop the hood on what makes us fans, it's kind of cathartic.
Yeah, I was like, do you feel the catharsis? Do you feel like you've let it all out, where you've let out the inner tie?
I'm going to go shed a tear.
Good. I love to hear it.
For that guy over there, my good friend Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildebrandt, thanks for downloading, for listening, maybe for crying with us here.
Maybe just
on today's
nodding
show.
along lightly violently. Yeah, been there.
Stay solid.
Peace.